Good morning, everyone. I am so inspired to be in this room with you all today, with my fellow panelists, and to connect and learn and talk about how we can build a united struggle against imperialist wars, occupations, sanctions, and our most critical fight today for ceasefire in Gaza and for the self-determination of Palestine. After all, here we are today in the belly of the beast, where the decisive battles will occur. My name is Janine Solanki. I'm based in Vancouver, Canada, and the chair of Mobilization Against War and Occupation, which has been organizing against imperialist wars and occupations for 20 years, always with the demand of freedom and self-determination for Palestine and all oppressed nations, as an ongoing campaign of our organization. As I'm here representing Canada, or from an anti-war group in Canada, I want to take a moment to clarify a misleading headline regarding a recent motion in Canadian Parliament. You may have heard that Canada is stopping arms shipments to Israel, and unfortunately this is not true. Unfortunately, Canada is continuing to ship arms to Israel, and I should note that Canada is a major arms manufacturer and dealer to the United States, to Saudi Arabia, to Israel, to many other countries, with over $28.5 million in military goods sent from Canada to Israel just between October and November last year, and $70 million of weapons exports approved between October 7th last year and January 8th, 2024. Among the other problematic language in the motion which reaffirmed Canada's support actually for Israel and condemnation of Hamas, regarding arms shipments specifically, the motion was to, and I quote, cease the further authorization and transfer of arms exports to Israel to ensure compliance with Canada's arms export regimen and to increase efforts to stop the illegal trade of arms, including to Hamas, end quote. This does not stop the export of arms that have already gotten export permits, which is potentially years worth of further arms exports, and does not also restrict so-called non-lethal exports, which includes component parts that go into deadly drones, fighter jets, and other weapons that Israel uses against our Palestinian sisters and brothers in Gaza. So, as you see in Canada, we still have a big fight ahead of us against the government of Canada participating in the genocide against Palestinians, alongside the struggle against US imperialism, which is funding, arming, and giving political support to the Zionist apartheid regime of Israel. So that note aside, today we're engaged in the most critical struggle for liberation and self-determination of Palestine in the last 75 years. For 6 months, we've witnessed the unstoppable brutality of genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, against the Palestinian people in Gaza. And for 6 months, we, all of us in this room and beyond, have been part of a consistent and militant worldwide movement that has brought tens of millions of people onto the street. Some who've been in solidarity with Palestine for decades, and some who've learned about Palestine in just the last few months, but have been compelled to stand on the side of humanity and the side of Palestine. Mass consciousness in favor of humanity has been growing and growing. Observing the fascist acts of genocide of Palestinians by Israel has shocked people worldwide and has moved the hearts and the minds of hundreds of millions of people in the world in favor of humanity and Palestinian rights. Slogans and demands have rung through the streets and through our consciousness. Ceasefire now, end the genocide, shut it down. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. US, stop arming and financing Israel. reinstate UNRWA funding, Israel out of Gaza, end the siege, free all Palestinian political prisoners, no justice, no peace, Biden and Netanyahu, we charge you with genocide, Palestine will be free, US, Canada, EU, you are complicit with genocide, stop bombing Gaza and Rafah, and free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! All of these slogans, all in all of these words that have become a second nature for us to continue chanting day after day, this establishes that we are in the midst of an unfolding anti-war and pro-Palestine movement that has the potential to go beyond the Vietnam anti-war movement that many here, I know, were also part of. Palestinians are not fighting for their self-determination only. Their struggle for freedom and liberation has been radicalizing millions upon millions of people worldwide, thousands of miles away from Palestine and Gaza. The class struggle in Palestine and Israel has pushed hundreds of millions of working people and oppressed people to the center of politics. We are clearly witnessing that the worldwide mass movement to support the Palestinian struggle and Palestinian rights is moving to a higher stage of a powerful anti-imperialist movement. Hundreds of millions of people have not only questioned and scrutinized the fascist and genocidal acts of Israel, but also of the United States, of Canada, and Europe too. Due to this, I'd like to borrow a methodology from the Communist Manifesto and apply it to today. A specter is haunting the capitalist and imperialist world, the specter of an anti-imperialist movement. It's important that as we're at the stage of needing to reinforce and strengthen our movement to ensure that it keeps gaining momentum and has the leadership and vision to continue as a long-term struggle through a ceasefire and onto the self-determination of Palestine, that we understand the position Palestine holds in the struggle against imperialism in the entire region of West Asia and North Africa, and how we can strengthen our movement through unity and consistency. We're at the beginning of opening an epoch that must take the concept of united front seriously, and I mean very, very seriously. We must develop two concepts: unity in action for Palestine and building a robust anti-imperialist movement. Two objectives for two objective and subjective reasons. One, despite the excellent and tireless efforts of anti-war organizations and various Palestinian groups, the mass movement of millions worldwide has remained merely mass spontaneous movement. This is where imperialists try to intervene and confuse the movement with their political maneuvering. Two, the scale of the mass movement worldwide is bigger than any organization, either anti-war, Palestinian, or the left in general, to sustain consistency in Palestinian solidarity movement building on the street, in political direction, and in unified action in the US, Canada, and worldwide. We need coordination, a basic structure, and more consultation together. We can't win with only small-scale organization or move into building an anti-imperialist movement worldwide without building momentum and without connecting really to that powerful mass solidarity movement for Palestine that we're seeing worldwide. In the final analysis of politics and class struggle, to win has to be who has the highest numbers. And we have those numbers. We have humanity on our side, on Palestine's side, and we need to keep organizing those numbers. For 75 years, we've seen Palestinians have tried every avenue to assert their right to self-determination, including legal and diplomatic measures. All so-called solutions imposed by imperialists and Israel on Palestinians since 1948 especially the Oslo Accords in 1993, have not brought peace and were never intended to bring peace or justice to Palestinians. Instead, as planned, they've prolonged and expanded the racist Zionist Israeli occupation and war against Palestine. From October 7, 2003, the defensive military operation of Palestinian resistance fighters from Gaza into Israel effectively ended all deceitful plans of the past, present, and future. The time of false promises and distractions is over. There is no going back to the status quo. The tide has turned, and the necessity of Palestinian self-determination and right to exist as a nation and to form a nation state and to dismantle the colonial state of Israel the way it is today is a struggle today that the world is fighting on the side of the Palestinian people. This struggle for Palestine reaches beyond the liberation of Palestine against Israeli occupation and extends into the fight against the new era of war and occupation, or as the US government claims it, the so-called war on terror, which has gripped West Asia and North Africa for over 23 years, since the invasion and occupation of Afghanistan in October to December of 2001. This is why imperialists in the White House, in Ottawa, in London, are risking so much to continue their support for Israel. The struggle for Palestine is also a fight against imperialism, whose warmongering has led by the US with the support of their allies, including Canada, has been causing death and destruction in West Asia, North Africa, and beyond. And as we're spending this weekend discussing, and as we campaign about in our home cities, US imperialism and its allies have killed 3 million people with their wars and occupations in Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, Yemen, Sudan, and Somalia with their new era of war and occupation. Any words of restraint that the Biden administration says to Israel in their genocide is not out of concern for Palestinian lives. It's just that they're concerned that the killing is maybe being too direct, too outright, waking too many people up to the injustices committed by the US government in their support for Israel and risking their ability to continue launching military interventions and imperialist aggression around the world. Today, as we're calling for a ceasefire, as we're calling for an end to the brutal Zionist Israeli bombardment against the Palestinian people, we are not only directing that demand to the Israeli regime, but also to the United States government and all imperialists. This war is not just conducted by Israel. The US government also bears a responsibility for their funding, arming, and political support of Israel from its creation in 1948 to the current genocide in Gaza. Right now, Biden, Trudeau, Sunak, all of these imperialist heads are maneuvering and desperately trying to justify their genocidal actions through the Israeli Zionist regime, pouring military aid and spinning media lies while the world increasingly sees the truth behind Israel's brutality. And this is not even because the imperialists really care about Israel, and most definitely not because they care about Jewish people, many of whom are on the streets in the movement for Palestine, but because their interests is to keep the colonial project secure, keep markets and resources throughout West Asia and North Africa within their hands. Uh-oh, I got the timesheet there. And to keep their populations, all of us, from rising up at home. So as we struggle for the freedom of Palestine, we're struggling for an end to imperialist hegemony and destruction in all of West Asia and North Africa. US and all imperialists can't afford to lose another war after their big defeat in Ukraine and losing ground with the unfolding new Cold War. Despite the claims that Israel needed to be a safe homeland for Jewish people, we know that there's no safety when a state is imposed by genocidal occupation, and as has been done on Palestinian land. This was actually just a convenient solution for racism in Europe and North Africa, where historically and today Jewish people have faced anti-Semitism, and where Jewish people should have the right to live without discrimination. And in fact, what we should talk about and tell people about is that historically, today, and for Jewish people throughout history, they have been safest in West Asian countries, side by side with their Muslim neighbors. So, as we're told, sorry, I'm wrapping up, I promise. As we're told that the solution is complicated, it's in fact simple. Palestinians' legitimate demand for self-determination must be met. One person, one vote, where Palestinian people of any religion can live together in peace and harmony. It's only Zionist regimes and their imperialist backers that are blocking this only viable solution from becoming a reality. No liberation or freedom is possible for Palestinians as long as Zionism stands, which at its core is colonial and expansionist against Palestine. So I look forward to meeting and connecting with you all this weekend to combine our ideas, our creativity, our collaboration to strengthen the anti-war movement and the Palestine solidarity movement. One campaign that we've started in Vancouver is a new postcard campaign to Biden, which is demanding, which I have some examples of, and you can get at the table outside, which is demanding ceasefire now, Israel out of Gaza now, end the siege on Gaza now, reinstate UNRWA funding now, stop arming Israel, and stop funding Israel. So I encourage you to join us for this campaign. Please see our table, and you can sign up to get more information. Just to end, and I'm sorry for going over my time a minute or two, now more than ever, we need unity. We have to come together in a united front for Palestine to build this growing movement for ceasefire and for self-determination of Palestine. Together in this room and around the world, this movement has the potential and capacity to truly change the world for the better. Together for Palestine, for justice, for an end to wars, occupations, and imperialist aggression, we can and will win. And as they say in Cuba, venceremos.